Sorry. So I just have a couple of housekeeping things before I get started. I know that there are a few of you that joined by phone. If you can mute your mic by just pressing *6, that would be really helpful. Again, that's *6. And if anyone has any questions, if you could hold them till the end, that would be really helpful too. I'll definitely get around to answering those. And if you have any comments on what I'm saying, you can definitely use the chat feature. There's an option to broadcast to all, and I will be asking a question, and you'll have an opportunity to type there too if you're interested. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining. So I'll get to the first slide. So this is me. I'm Janelle McCoy. I'm an Associate Director with the AHOC team. I'm sure that you all have been getting a lot of emails from me recently. If anyone is connected by phone, can you please mute your mic by pressing *6? I just hear a little bit of background noise, and I'm not sure where it's coming from. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, so I'm Janelle McCoy. I'm Associate Director with AHOC. As most of you should know, I'm responsible for managing site partnerships. And so if you have any questions about the program, you can always feel free to reach out to me. One important function that I have with the organization, which I'm not sure if all of you know is possible, is that a lot of people with returning VISTAs or that have worked with VISTAs before do know that the VAD is a living document, so there's always the opportunity to edit it as long as it still is consistent with what you applied for in your RFP and it matches the goals of our program. So I just mentioned that because a large part of my job is to make sure that all your members are working on things that are in their VADs, that comply with our program, and we also want to make sure that if your member is working on something that isn't in their VAD but should be, we can definitely work to get those things added in as well. The same thing goes for if your program needs change, you can always edit your VAD to put more relevant tasks in for your member. So you can always feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about that, or if you have any ideas for the direction you want your VISTA to move in, you can always contact me and I can work with you to see what we can do. And then I just have a couple of announcements. Just some bad news. I'm sure that all of you have already heard about this, but USDA and CNCS are not going to renew our funding, so our program will end in November of 2018. However, the good news is that our current members, so the members that are at your site now and the members that will be starting this November, will not be affected by this funding cut. So that's all the information I have for now, but if you have any further questions about that, Vicki said please feel free to reach out to her. So I do apologize if any of you have emailed me about that and I didn't respond. I was just waiting on information. And excuse me. Sorry. And then one other announcement is I'm not sure if all of you saw, but I think in the middle of last week I sent out an email regarding the holiday schedule. So the holidays are just a list that HFA has for our holidays. So basically all your members should be able to have those holidays off. And if for some reason you need their help on those days, we do ask that you do allow them to take a flex day for each of those days if they are going to be working on those days. And basically, this is also in the timesheet guide, which I can also send out, but a flex day is just a day that they can have off within the same 2-week time period on their timesheets. It gets a little complicated, but if you refer to the America Learn schedule, so you'll see like the range of dates that is on America Learns, we go by that as the 2-week time period. Of course, though, if you have any questions or confusion about the holiday schedule, you can definitely ask me, and I'll be able to provide you with all those resources where you could find more information. All right, so let's get started. Sorry for the long title. Today's presentation is on managing your VISTA member to ensure sustainable programs. And since we won't be having a year 8, unfortunately, it's even more important now, even though it was important before, that you all try to work with your members to make sure that they can build sustainable programs, since their position won't be around after November of next year, or earlier for members that started in June, July, or August of this year. Excuse me. So we have a couple of objectives today. First is, just before we get started with the meat of the sustainability talk, I just wanted to remind you all of a couple of expectations that we have and that you should have for your members, just to make sure that they have the proper tools necessary. And then we're going to talk about the ideas for project sustainability. Okay, so as I mentioned, first we're going to discuss how to set expectations early to ensure that your VISTA can help meet the needs of your organization and ensure that sustainable programs are created. So these are the expectations, the basic expectations. The VAD should encompass all of your VISTA's work. I'm sure that a lot of us had a lot of back and forth with the VADs. I was telling you what could and couldn't be included and things like that. But as I mentioned, the VAD is a living document. So if you do come across any ideas for work that your VISTA could be working on that you know isn't being reported on by the VAD, definitely reach out and we'll make sure to get that great work included. So that's why this note is here. And also, program measures help to track member progress. So we actually provide you with the supplemental matrices templates, and hopefully all of you have filled those out and, have figured out the numbers that you'd like to include on that. But that isn't only a tool for us to see what you have planned for the year. That's also a tool that you should be using in order to track your member progress. It'll definitely help you to realize what your benchmarks are and possibly either increase or decrease your expectations for them. And then one thing is that you should have check-ins with your members often. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have check-ins weekly. With working with this program, I found that the supervisors that meet with their VISTAs at least biweekly usually have the most success because they can check in on progress, give an update of projects that need to be done, get an update on projects that have been completed, etc. So it's really good to be in communication with your member, not only to keep them motivated, but to help keep them on the track to working towards sustainability. And then also, this is an expectation that you can have of us. Especially myself, I can definitely guarantee that if you have any questions, you can always feel free to reach out to me. And if for some reason I can't answer it, I will connect you with the correct person or information. Let's see. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So these are just some concrete expectations. These are based on our program and on the VISTA program that I wanted to cover. So, of course, there are some aspects of our program that require diligent supervision. So please keep all of these things in mind to ensure that your VISTA is able to complete their service. Remember to talk to your VISTA member early on and remind them of the prohibited actions. They cannot work on political activity, criminal activity, of course, and they are allowed to work on, to have an alternate job after filling out a form, of course, and submitting that to you, and then you would in turn submit that to us. That extra work cannot be, should not interfere with their duties at your site, so they should be able to work full-time and it shouldn't affect their work. And they can take classes, but they should make sure that those as well are not interfering with their work. or their schedule. And regarding time and attendance, we do have a requirement that our members work at least 37.5 hours a week or equal to 75 hours biweekly. As I mentioned, the biweekly period is pretty flexible, so they can work 75 within a biweekly period, and that's the minimum amount that they should be working. So in order to meet the requirement for the AHOC program, they should make sure to work 75 hours biweekly. So we need your assistance in looking over their timesheets. I'm sure a lot of you get reminder emails from me, and it helps a lot when y'all keep up to date with following up with them if they aren't submitting their timesheets, or if their timesheets are incorrect, having them correct them. That really helps us a lot. And then time management and scheduling, went over that. And then if, according to the holiday schedule, if your sites are closed an extended amount of time, say, for example, a week for Christmas, a week for New Year's. I know a few of you are at campuses, so this may be the case. Please reach out to me. We need to work on, basically you just need to give me a work plan for what you have scheduled. Probably half a page that just lists out the tasks that they'll be working on and how they'll be held accountable for those, be it an email that they send to you at the end of each day with the tasks accomplished, etc. And then along with that, we'll need what's mentioned on the slide, which is the teleservice request, which is basically a form that we get from CNCS that says that where they will be working from meets the standards for VISTA. Again, all of these things I can definitely, if you have any questions about it, you can come to me on a case-by-case basis. And then, of course, just make sure to follow all of the America Learns policies. Sorry for the typo. I should have sent out the timesheet guide, and your members also have the reporting and reflection log guides. But if any of you have questions during the year, please feel free to reach out to me about those as well. Okay, so now we're going to start with sustainability. Sustainability and capacity building, as I said before, have always been major goals of the VISTA program. Now, even more so that the AHOC program will not be continuing for an 8th year, it's essential that you work with your VISTA member to ensure that they are working on activities that are going to lead to sustainable processes and programs. So there's a definition for project sustainability. This definition is taken from the VISTA campus website, which is a website that VISTA put together to provide resources to supervisors, VISTA leaders, and VISTAs. It's a great resource. I'll definitely mention it a couple times more, and I have links to it at the end of this presentation. So sustainability is the ability of an organization or program to continue engaging community stakeholders to meet the needs of the community efficiently after the last VISTA is gone. A lot of what I'll be covering today will be found on the VISTA campus, so this presentation is a short outline of a longer presentation. So if you're interested in that, I can definitely link that for you. So creating project sustainability is the key goal of any VISTA project. Ultimately, each VISTA should be working toward achieving the goals outlined in their VADs and to develop programming that can be sustained even after their term is complete and they are no longer with your organization. Therefore, it is important that VISTAs are documenting their step-by-step processes when it comes to whatever new resources, procedures, community partner work, etc., that they develop during their year of service. So here are some questions that have to do with the keys to sustainability. In order to work toward creating sustainable programs, it's essential that both you as a site supervisor and the VISTA member are able to answer these questions. So just take a couple of seconds to look them over. So the first question is directly related to the VISTA members' work. They'll be working towards creating these relationships and physical resources such as pamphlets, how-to guides, contact sheets, etc. And the second question is something that you should have in place so that you can either have the member train the person or people, such as volunteers, that will continue the program, or even like partner agency members or other employees at your organization. And the last question, is this included as a responsibility on your VISTA members' VAD? If so, do they know what steps they are taking to connect to the community? Have you been guiding them in those steps to make sure that they are meshing with the community well? And have you taken an active role to get them acquainted with the stakeholders so that they can work on building those partnerships? And of course, it's understandable if the whole purpose of them being there is to build the partnerships. So we do want to make sure that at the end of their service, if they were the sole people for building those partnerships, that they make sure to connect all of you with those great people that they're working with. So all of these things I mentioned on this slide have to do with capacity building. The next slide breaks down the things I mentioned into succinct categories. So the ultimate goal of the VISTA's year will be to be able to work on these three general categories. So building up knowledge, working on products that can be disseminated throughout the community to share resources about your organization, and the transfer of relationships. So all of these things, capacity building, have to do with sustainability. So ideally, like I said, we want to make sure the VISTAs can transfer all of these to someone that can continue their legacy. And this slide is basically starting at the end goal, so I'm going to work a little backward from there. I just wanted to get you all thinking about, the ultimate goal that your VISTA will have, so that when we're looking through the slides, you can see the different steps and key things they should be working on. So in order to have a discussion about sustainability, first we need to have a discussion about direct service. We do understand that direct service can be very helpful to your organization, but the ultimate goal of the VISTA program is to have our members working on things that are sustainable, not just trying to provide immediate solutions to help people in need, which is what direct service is. We're trying to have them work on building up different processes, materials, relationships that can carry on the program in the future. And so some examples of direct service are activities like assisting community members with SNAP applications, delivering meals directly to clients, or teaching nutrition education classes directly to clients. So when is it appropriate for the members to do direct service? We do know that there is an amount of direct service that they should be doing. I included about 10% of their time can be spent on it, but that's just a broad number I got from CNCS. It's not written in stone. That's just an estimate. So ideally, the members shouldn't really be working on direct service, but if needed, at your organization, they can work up to 10% of direct service. And examples that I can think of with organizations, some of you may be on the call that I've heard of that we have allowed direct service are, say, there's a site that has a call center and all of the employees work about an hour a week to answer the calls and give information. If all the employees at the organization are working on that project, as long as it has to do with their VAD, since it's an anti-hunger call line, that's fine, then the VISTA member can participate. But it should be as the same amount as the current employees and no more than 10% of the VISTA members' time. So that's just one example. And of course, if any of you have concerns or confusion about direct service, please reach out to me and I can definitely let you know if what they're working on is okay or not. So I'm just going to go over a couple of other times when direct service can be allowed in smaller increments. So let's see. So the first one is direct service can be done in a brief period at the beginning of a member's service or at the beginning of when they're learning how to carry out a certain project so that they can learn the primary responsibilities of the assignment and be able to share that information with potential volunteers. So this would be the case if, say, they're a volunteer coordinator. That's part of their job description on their VAD. So they'll need to learn how to, for example, help community members fill out SNAP applications. So for a brief amount of time, probably about 2 weeks to a month, however long it takes for them to be able to familiarize themselves with the program enough to train volunteers, they're allowed to do some direct service. And let's see, and then of course they're allowed to do some direct service if it has to do with a primary responsibility of the assignment. So another example would be like if they are taking volunteers that they trained out into the field for the first time in order for the members to be able to do something, so they need to be there to supervise. They can do that. And one more example would be that if they are going to reach out to potential partners, they can go out and reach to potential partners in person and things like that. That would be considered something that they're allowed to do. I think as long as they're not working directly with clients, so directly with low-income people and trying to connect them to immediate resources like school breakfast or handing out food or things like that, they're allowed to do some direct service. And then one thing I just wanted to cover, which came up recently regarding working at volunteer events. Just a note, our members can be volunteer coordinators or volunteer managers for events outside, such as trying to recruit or trying to work with volunteers to help members fill out SNAP applications, but they should only be working on work that is included in their VAD. So they can't really work on different types of volunteer projects, like say having community members do a neighborhood cleanup or things like that. That would definitely not apply to their work, and it would be taking from the time that they could be working on their VAD. So I just wanted to cover that since that was an example that just came up and just to make sure that everyone else is on the right track. So sorry for the long spiel about direct service, but it's a very important topic to cover. All right, so a couple key elements of a sustainable project is to increase an organization's effectiveness and to reduce poverty in the community. So VISTA projects build capacity to support program sustainability. VISTA members can create, expand, or strengthen organizational systems or processes, and they can engage and empower community members and organizational partners to have more of a contribution to the program to keep it sustainable in the future. So here are a few things to think about and then some more, questions to ask yourself. What will the projects look like after the VISTAs depart? What will the VISTAs leave behind for their organizations? What products, knowledge, and relationships will the VISTAs transfer to their communities? Again, they're the three things: knowledge, relationships, and products. And what does a successful VISTA project look like? So for all of these, you should work with your VISTA member to ensure that they document all of the answers to these questions so that once they complete their service, they will have something they will have left something tangible to keep the program going. And regarding the final question there on that sheet, success may look different for each assignment, but all successful capacity building projects share this characteristic. The work begun by the VISTA member will continue after the VISTA leaves. Let me repeat that. The work begun by the VISTA member will continue after the VISTA leaves. So that's the ultimate goal that your VISTA and you should be working together to get accomplished. So after saying that, you should think about your VISTA's year ahead and what activities will they perform for your organization? How will they define success? And to make the greatest impact on your community, as I mentioned before, and I'll probably mention a few other times during this presentation, please check in regularly with your VISTA and work with them to fine-tune their activities so that they keep focused on capacity building. And with your VISTA, your project will make a lasting impact on those you serve.
Hi, Amanda. It's Gloria McAdam. Just looking for an update on the status of those tests that's supposed to be ordered for.
Sorry, I had to mute a mic. Sorry about that. So I just wanted to go over one example of something that your members may be working on or may not, but it definitely is one of our VAD goals. So this is just an example of a VAD goal that one of our members could have. As all of you know, a number of steps go into the VISTA activities that are listed. So the ones that are there are create outreach systems, develop targeted marketing materials, and train volunteers to do outreach about SNAP use at farmers markets. So a lot of different steps go into those activities, such as perhaps researching the best method of communicating to the local community to make sure that members of the community can be well informed of the programs. And in order to train volunteers on the best way to do outreach, the member would need to figure out what the best way is by improving upon your organization's current methods or by creating outreach plans from scratch, or perhaps even using information that they obtained from partner organizations. So incorporating other organizations' best practices into your organization. And here's an example of an objective. If you look where it says VAD goals, this is actually one of our VAD objectives, to promote awareness of and improving access to SNAP at farmers markets. So that's one of the objectives that some of your members may be working on. And the goals of the AHOC VISTA program fall under the Healthy Futures National Goal. So that's one of the different goals that VISTA has set forth. So ours falls under Healthy Futures. And of course, you should be familiar with the project goal. You may have looked it over a number of times in creating the VAD. But it basically outlines our 5 VAD goals, which are benefits access, SNAP ENT, farmers markets, nutrition education, and volunteer sustainability. So the one that this slide includes is a farmers market VAD objective. And it's to promote awareness and improve access at farmers markets. And then, as I mentioned before, below it are activities that will accomplish that objective. As you all can see, all of the activities listed are ones that will hopefully lead to sustainability. Creating systems, those are things that can be used once the member completes their service. Developing marketing materials. This is another thing that once the member completes their service, your organization should be able to use. And the final part, train volunteers. Of course, having dedicated volunteers to carry out the work is something that would be sustainable for your organization. I just wanted to add an important note. With the second activity, developing targeted materials, something to keep in mind is that it's really great if you have the materials in an editable format. So have the member save it as both a Word document that can be edited and as a PDF, for example, so that when you have to edit dates in the future, or if numbers change on SNAP qualifications or anything like that, you don't have to recreate the whole document again. So have your member work on a couple of formats for each document, and that's really helpful. And another helpful thing to know on just these specific activities would be that before your member leaves, it would be really helpful if they're able to introduce the volunteers that they develop relationships with to other staff members at your organization who may be involved, with carrying on volunteer management responsibilities, so that the responsibilities can be established, the relationships can be established early on. So basically what I mean is try to open up to your member if you're the person that will be, taking over the volunteers when they leave, and just be able to have them be comfortable with introducing the volunteers to people in your organization. This is especially important because a large part of a volunteer's interest in continuing to volunteer has to do with how engaged they feel at the organization and how valued they feel. So that's just a suggestion I have. And then just a note, excuse me 1 second. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold, so my voice is in and out. I apologize for that. So unfortunately, we won't have enough time to cover every possible VAD goal and objective, but I included this slide, so hopefully it gives you an idea of how to build sustainable programs. And I also have another resource that I'll mention later on that has more about each specific VAD goal. All right, let's go to the next slide. So why were some projects not sustained? These are just a few reasons. And this has to do specifically with VISTA projects. It's taken from a case study that VISTA puts on, which I also included at the end of this slideshow that you can refer to if you're interested in. So a few of the reasons why they weren't sustained were poor organization and project management. They might have lacked resources, funds, or volunteers. They lacked community support, or they lacked organizational support. So this is why creating a plan for sustainability is really important. And so these are some questions that you should answer. So all of these things go into creating a sustainable project plan. So a project should have program capacity, human capacity, financial capacity, communication capacity. And then once all those things in place, then community support is essential. I'm sure a number of you are, you all work with nonprofits, so you're very, very familiar with this. I just wanted to include this slide, though, to just let you know that VISTAs can help for the most part with these things, except with financial capacity, because as some of you may know, our VISTAs are no longer allowed to do fund development work, so please just make sure that they don't work on fund development. Okay, so just more specifically, a sustainability plan should include objectives. So a VISTA knows what the ultimate goal of their work is. This can be taken from both the supplemental matrices if they want numerical values, or from their VADs with the member activities, which is the fourth thing on the slide. You should work with them on milestones to track their progress. We do have a partner site where the supervisor is very hands-on, and I suggest this for you if you all have time to do this. I think it, in the long run, might be helpful for you. But what she does is she basically lays out on big sheets of paper. This doesn't necessarily have to be done on big sheets of paper, but she just lays out month by month what the members' milestones are. So the goal of their program is to try to, they work on a train the trainer program. So for example, if a member started in June, a milestone for July would be make sure you're familiarized with the Train the Trainer model so that you're able to do a practice session with our employees. So that would be a milestone. So my suggestion is if you haven't already started this, this might be something useful. Just work with their members on having regular check-ins with them and setting milestones, whether they be as broad as that, having them work on a Train the Trainer model, having them complete a nutrition education course and teach it, or even as small as just being able to create a flyer that they can distribute to different organizations. So just create whatever milestone you think is applicable to your site. Again, that ties in with timelines. A lot of VISTAs, this may be their first job, so it's definitely helpful if supervisors can be as hands-on as possible. I know you're all busy, but if you are available to just work a basic timeline out with them, that helps them a lot, and it keeps them on the right track to sustainability. And then think about in the future who will be responsible for carrying on the program once they're done with their position, and start thinking about that early. Because as I mentioned, building those relationships up before the VISTA leaves is a really valuable thing to do. Again, checking in and assess progress, and then meet and adjust plan as needed. And then this slide just shows the sustainability roles that you as a supervisor or your organization or, even your community can have. So hopefully you all have envisioned a future of your project. I know a lot of you have been relying on the VISTA resource. So hopefully this will get your mind thinking about ways to keep it sustainable even though you won't have a position from our organization next year, unfortunately. So try to envision the future of your project. Who will be carrying that project on. And then if there isn't already one, try to create and engage a community advisory board. We do have a lot of members that meet with community partners, and they work to get these community advisory boards started. So they basically take stakeholders from their community that they know a lot about the community and get them involved with the organization. So the earlier the members can do that, the better. And if that's something that's already established at your organization, getting the member to work with that is definitely a valuable experience. And then make sure to create and implement the sustainability plan, which is outlined in the last slide. And then lastly, orient partner sites and member to your plan. And for the VISTA members, as I mentioned many times, they should be working on building the capacity of your organization and the community. They should support sustainability through their VAD activities. They should engage staff and community in the VAD activities. And they should, again, transfer knowledge, products, and relationships. So I was just curious. So I have a chat question. I haven't tried this before in a presentation, so I'll see if it works. But let me see. If hopefully you all see a little chat box on the left side of your screen. So if you see that there, can you just take a second to just first off select broadcast to all participants? And then just put the answer for this question over there. So, and it's okay if you don't have an answer. That's what the point of this presentation is too. So if you have an answer to this, can you please type it in the corner? So how are you working with your VISTAs to ensure the sustainability of your program? Okay, great. So I'm starting to get some answers, just trying to expand the box. So thanks. Gloria McAdams said she's having them work on recruiting and training volunteers. Awesome. Jason Riggs from Roadrunner Food Bank said He's keeping track of all the documents created, standard operating procedures. I'm assuming that's what SOP is. And presentations are all stored in a share file. Awesome. And Tom said having them meet with the community leaders regarding the future of the farmers markets and expand to other parts of the city. Great. These are all great examples. So Gloria and Tom mentioned building relationships, and Jason mentioned working on creating products and sharing knowledge. And I'll just go over a couple of other ones. So wow, Patty said that they're working on a SNAP-RX program and that they're considering a subsidy from hospitals. And I'm sure you all can see that there. And then I will also include all of these responses in the email I send out later that will have a link to the YouTube recording of this along with all the slides that I also sent out earlier in case you're interested. And then the last one is just making sure the VISTA speaks with other VISTAs for best practices and sustainability, and so that you all know how to not reinvent the wheel, and then looking for models that work. Awesome. All right, thanks everyone for participating. All right, so I know this is probably about the, oh sorry, one second. Oh, okay, I'll also send out an email later because I had a request for if I can connect all of the supervisors. I'll send out an email to all the supervisors and see if everyone's okay with that. Once I get a confirmation, making sure no one is against that for whatever reason, then I'll definitely make sure to connect you all, because you're right. It would be great to be able to connect you all as well. So I will work on that. And then, oh, I got another response. Oh, great. Salam had a great idea. So just having food pantries enroll people for SNAP. Great. So you're working with people that are coming for a basic need and then trying to connect them with long-term resources. That's a great idea. All right. Thanks again, everyone. So I'm going to start with this slide now. So it's just about capacity building and, again, the transfer of knowledge, products, and relationships. I just wanted to go over these things more specifically, so just give some more examples of possible things that would fall under these categories to get you thinking about these things in case you weren't already thinking about them. So you have an idea of what should be passed on. So basically like stakeholder analysis. This could come from a survey that your member puts out regarding community need, which is in a lot of your members' VADs. And if it isn't, you can reach out to me and we could put that in if that's something you think you need. Sharing story collection. So there are some members working on collecting stories in the community, and then those stories can be used in reporting or on social media, etc., to spread the word about the organization's work. Another thing is, and this is a way to transfer knowledge, which is presentations to organizational leaders and staff. So before the member completes their service or during their year, it's great to have them do presentations to the organizational leaders and staff to make sure that everyone's on the same page about what they were working on. And once the members are complete, once their members are done with their service, then hopefully someone from either organizational leaders or staff, or even members of the community that they meet at community events and presentations will be able to take on the role of spreading the word about the organization. And then lastly, transfer of knowledge, training groups of volunteers to continue the work. All right, and then the next thing, transferring products. So there are just some examples of products that could be transferred. So training and coaching users of the program. So say that there is a, let's see, a program that you use to do SNAP pre-screenings. So basically training volunteers to be able to use those systems, or training interns that are recruited by the organization to do those things when the member is no longer there. As something that Jason mentioned, his organization does, having a shared drive is a valuable resource with all the guides, user guides, templates, etc. Google Drive is a great resource. Dropbox, another great shared drive. Just one important thing to note about the last bullet point is something that may get overlooked. It's the importance of passwords. I can't stress this enough. Make sure that you have your VISTA member record all of the passwords and links to the passwords and links to the websites and programs that they use before they leave, and have everyone try to run through and see if they understand how to use it, or have the member create a guide on how to do what they were doing on these websites or shared drives or whatever. So don't forget passwords, very important. All right. So I actually skipped the slide by accident. So this is regarding transferring relationships. So it's very important to have these things, so a contact database. And it's important for the contact database to include as much useful information as possible. So, you can include things such as, besides the basic things like names, addresses, etc., possibly a level of involvement, like how involved volunteers were, for example, if they had a preference for what they like to do at the organization. So they don't necessarily like packing food, but they do love doing SNAP pre-screenings. Like things like that should be noted, just to make sure that once the member leaves, everyone's on the same page about the volunteer. That way the volunteer still feels welcome and that they're still encouraged to continue volunteering. Because then it presents your organization as having a general interest in their interest as well. And then the second one is just kind of like an idea and a suggestion. So early on, just try to have your members say we instead of I as much as possible, so that when they speak to different people, your stakeholders in the community, partner organizations, etc., those people automatically start to associate the member with your organization and then build the connection with the organization. If they continue saying I, then the people might not necessarily want to continue work when they're not there. So basically, the more they feel like your VISTA is connected to your organization, hopefully it will encourage them to still be connected. And then the last one, it will also be helpful if your member is able to get partnership agreements that include meeting times of community groups, stuff like that, and memos that are sent out, so that people in your organization will have as much information as possible to continue those relationships. And these are just some suggestions. These aren't necessarily all of the ideas, but just a few. All right, and then I mentioned this briefly earlier. This is just our Promising Practices Guide cover. This is actually online, and the reason why I mentioned it is because it is a compilation of a lot of different VISTA's work in the past, actually within the last 2 to 3 years, and it just includes different processes and procedures that they use to achieve their VAD goals, along with the links to websites where different resources are. So Salam, this is basically something that you were looking for. It includes all the different ideas for things that have worked in the past, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel, as you mentioned. So this is something that is basically the bread and butter of our program, so it includes a lot of things that our members have done. And then this is just the resources that I used for this project, for this presentation. So the first one is a link to the presentation where this was adapted from. So if you're interested in more specific information about sustainability, that one's really good. That presentation was about like an hour and a half though, so this one's about 30 minutes. So I understand that you're all busy, so I wanted to try to get as much information in as possible. But if you are interested in more information, the first link is for that. The second one's on capacity building and action for supervisors. So it's basically an interactive web page where you could go and see what you know about capacity building, try to see if something's direct service or capacity building. Is kind of like fun because you can pick and choose and see what you know and don't know, and hopefully learn more about capacity building if you don't already know. And then there's gaining community buy-in if you need that information, a template for check-ins so you can get an idea of questions to ask. Again, like I mentioned, it doesn't necessarily have to be weekly. I do suggest bi-weekly for your check-ins. And then a copy of the VISTA Sustainability Report if you're interested. And then finally, a link to our Promising Practices Guide. I will be sending out these links in the email that I send out in a couple of hours. That will have a link to the YouTube video, if I do have luck uploading that today, of this presentation, along with the PDFs of these slides if you want to refer back or share with other people that may work with the VISTA member. All right, so that's the end of my presentation for today. Before I ask for questions, I just wanted to mention that this is the first of this year in a series of a first in a series of roundtable trainings I'll be giving. I'm hoping to be able to give them every couple months. So when I send out the email later, if you have any ideas for possible topics that you'd like me to cover or anything like that, you can definitely let me know. I will be sending out the schedule within the next couple weeks or so with more of an idea of when the next roundtable will be. So that's it for me for now. So I guess if anyone has any questions, you can, if you're on the phone, unmute by pressing *7. And then if you're on a mic, you can just talk and I should be able to hear you. Does anyone have any questions? All right, so I guess that's the end of the presentation for now. But if anyone wants to stay on and ask questions, you can. I'll stay on for about 5 more minutes or so. And as I mentioned before, I'm always available by email or phone if any of you have any questions that come up. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. I really appreciate that you took time out of your busy schedules to join me today and hopefully get some valuable information that you can use while working with your VISTAs. All right, thank you.